Yes, we are live. Hello and welcome to Kind July Conversations number 2. My name is Jane Hutcheon, and in a moment I'm going to introduce you to our fabulous guest, the mathematics teacher and advisor, Eddie Wu. But before I bring Eddie on, I just wanted to say a big hello and a warm welcome to you wherever you are. Please talk to me on the chat. There's a function, there's a tab there. Tell me where you are at this time and how are you doing. I'm really excited about this conversation, and just to let you know how we're going to work. So from now for about the next 30 minutes, I'm going to be doing this sort of Q&A thing with Eddie, and then we're going to throw open the field to you guys, and you are very welcome to ask Eddie questions. And there is a Q&A tab, which I think you might be able to see on the screen in front of you. That is what I want you to use if you are going to ask Eddie a question. Hi to you, Jerry, and hello to everyone. Without further ado, I don't even know where to start in terms of introducing Eddie Wu. He's obviously the founder and creator of WooTube. He was Australia's local hero in the Australian of the Year Awards 2018. He's one of the top 10 teachers as announced by the Global Teachers Prize. Hi, Vicky. Hi, all of you. Let's, without further ado, bring on Eddie Wu. Hi, Eddie.
Good evening, Jane, and to everybody. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to this chat.
It's so lovely to see you. Eddie, you always look really happy. I wonder, do you feel as happy as you look?
That's a good question, because in some ways, I don't know how happy I look, but I do know one thing, which is that, especially now speaking with you, but all the time, we all have so many reasons, I think, to be happy and grateful about the things that are going on in our lives, in the world around us, even when there are some troubling and difficult things like, say, this global pandemic that we are all living through. Even in the midst of that, I find there's always a silver lining that you can focus on. And that's what I think I'm thinking about, hopefully, when you're seeing me smile toward the camera.
That's great to hear. And I have to say, I'm very excited because we've got one caller from India, Neha, I think she's called. It's lovely to hear that you've got fans far and wide across this globe, as we well know. And also people in Perth. Hello to you too. I don't want to leave anybody out here. Eddie, I've got this list. It's a list of treating people with kindness that a guy called Leo Baubauta, who runs, I think it's Zen Habits, a blog, and all of our guests have added to this. So I want to read it out to you, and then I'd like to hear how you would value add to that list. So we've got be friendly, be helpful, listen, stop criticizing, don't control others. I like that one. Rise above retaliation, be courteous in traffic. I like that one too. Be the change, just say hello. That was from Mrs. Hurley, the Governor General's wife. Be slow to judge. That was from the Governor General. Be considerate of others. I gave him 2 because he's a pretty important guy. And Grace Tame, our guest from last week, said, be patient. What would you put on that list, Eddie?
Wow, Jane, I mean, that is a pretty impressive and comprehensive list. I think probably the thing that rises to the top of my mind is forgiveness. I think maybe the phrase I'd put on there is to forgive abundantly, because, you know, we are all, each of us, fragile and imperfect human beings. We all make mistakes. Sometimes we hurt the people whom we love. Actually, I think the people whom we love are often the people who we hurt most because they're close to us and they trust us, and there's such an intimacy there that they're often the people who we sometimes rub up the wrong way. And I guess forgiveness is in my mind because without forgiveness, kindness ends, because we are all going to collide with each other in some way, shape or form over the course of time. So I think that's why forgiveness is at the front of my mind.
I love that. That's a great addition. Thank you so much. Eddie, I wonder, some of us, I know you and me, we're in lockdown, and many people who are listening to this call might be in lockdown. I wonder, is there a time in your life when you've thought most deeply about kindness?
There's been a few different occasions, I think, throughout my life where kindness as a concept, as something which is meaningful to me personally, has come into my life. Probably the one that is really the strongest memory that I can think of is the time when I was in early primary school. I didn't have a fun time as a young boy at school. I have an older brother and an older sister, and my older sister, who's 5 years older than me, there was a very small overlap where I'd just started, kindergarten in year 1, and she was up there in the big leagues with the other big kids. But shortly after that, when she left, I remember being quite lonely in primary school, being quite young, not feeling very much alike the people around me. And so that was a time when I think I was thinking about kindness, because my experience often with my peers was not kindness. I don't make friends easily. I know this is a bit surprising to some people, but I'm actually a classic introvert. So it takes me a long time to warm up to people personally and to trust them. And certainly if you went back to 7 or 8-year-old Eddie, he was not very good at making friends and was sort of desperate to receive kindness from people and didn't know how to do that. So I think that that's a period of my life that lasted many years that's had a deep impact on the kind of person I am now, and especially the kind of teacher I am now, because young people, they are my work and the thing that I love going to school for every day.
I want to talk a bit about your students in a moment, but I want to ask you, so I'm guessing you felt a bit of an outsider as a young person.
Absolutely. I mean, outside is probably the perfect word. I might not have had the presence of mind to articulate it that way back when I was that little, but I sort of definitely knew that I didn't quite fit in wherever I went. I'll give you a really short example. I was born in Australia and I've lived here my entire life, but I have a face that certainly in the early 90s was one that sort of was looked at with suspicion. And, my surname, it's kind of like, where does that come from? What does that mean? And there were very few people that I grew up around who I could say, oh, they're just like I am. But that's not just my experience here. On the very few occasions when I went back to Malaysia, which is where my parents were born, and all of their family is there, I'd go there and I could blend in so long as I didn't open my mouth, because I can't speak Cantonese, which was my parents' main language, fluently. And so as soon as I would say anything to anyone, it was kind of like, whoa, look at that foreigner, he doesn't belong here. And so there was this kind of alienation that I felt and a lack of belonging everywhere. And I think sort of processing that and understanding that kindness sometimes means, often it means reaching out to those people who are unlike us and showing them care and sympathy and empathy. That's why that period of my life, it's sort of, kindness was really important to me then.
Eddie, I know you have spoken about bullying that took place when you were a kid, particularly when you were a young kid. And kids always, well, not always, but a lot of times kids can do mean things to other kids. I wonder, have you ever had an opportunity to meet some of the kids who weren't really kind to you? Have you been able to meet them as adults, I wonder?
Yeah, actually, not a huge number of times, but, because obviously, especially from a young age, people sort of diverge and go to all different places around the country, around the world. But there have been a few opportunities. I actually remember a few years back, someone who made life particularly difficult for me when I was sort of in year 3, year 4. I actually very distinctly remember someone coming to the school where I'm currently teaching, and they were a new teacher. They were substituting for someone who was sick, and I didn't recognize them, but I thought, that name, it sounds familiar. And as I was walking past the staff common room, sure enough, I saw them signing in, and I thought, I know who that is. This is someone from, a long time ago, probably wouldn't recognize me. I look a little bit different from back then. And it was quite strange, actually. It's sort of the interaction that I had with this person. It was cordial. It was pretty, polite and courteous. And it sort of dawned on me as I went away from that interaction that probably this person had little to no memory of who I was back then, perhaps the way they treated me. I don't know that necessarily, like you said, children can often be cruel or mean, but not always maliciously. Sometimes they just don't know what impact their words or actions can have on the people around them.
Absolutely. And, you know, some people on the chat are actually saying that they relate because they too are an introvert. That was from Kay. And also Jess saying that she too felt like an outsider, and thanks you for sharing that. And a lot of people say they know the feeling of not belonging everywhere. I wonder, your own journey with maths. I've heard you say that at high school you actually preferred English and drama. And I wonder, did you choose maths because it's an underdog?
Maths is certainly an underdog. I cannot question that. I think it's one of the most polarizing and in some ways alienating subjects out there. I had a colleague actually recently who told me maths is the easiest subject to teach badly, which I think accounts for a lot of people's bad experience of mathematics. I've met so many people down the years who, you know, once they find out what I do, I'm like, hi, I'm Eddie, I'm a mathematics teacher. You know, I think politely they'll say, oh, I was never really into maths. If they're being more honest, they might say much more colorfully that they really didn't like the experience. And almost always I find that it is not the subject itself, like numbers or patterns or things like that they dislike. It's the way that they learned it. So I think that the experience personally through a teacher of encountering any subject, it does make mathematics a bit of an underdog in that way. I guess though, to just return to your original question, that love of humanities, English, history and drama, for me that was about, you know, these are things that I love to learn, but teaching as a profession, as a career, was less about, you know, what I wanted to, you know, develop and grow in the things that I love. It was really about interactions with students and helping them to grow and flourish and become citizens who can meaningfully contribute to the communities that they live in. So in some ways, even though I know this seems nonsensical to a lot of people, and they've told me so, for me it was not that crazy or an outlandish a decision to, at a fairly late stage, decide to teach a subject that was not what I originally planned to go and teach. It's because it was about the students for me and the relationship with them and growing them throughout that time.
So I know you are quite a devout person. Can I ask you, did you see becoming a maths teacher, I don't know if this is putting too strong a word to it, but did you see it as a kind of calling?
Yeah, look, I mean, as you point out, I'm a Christian, and as a man of faith, I think one of the most profound things is that we talk about professions, but I think we also think about vocations, and that's literally what the word means, the voca, you know, voice. It's what are we called to? And for me, I definitely did sense, you know, and this is part of, you know, a bit of tension in the relationship I have with my parents as I went through years 11 and 12. There was a lot going on in my family at that time, but particularly, yeah, well, I mean, that was a time where my mum was very ill, so she developed lung cancer, and she passed away the year after I left school, but she, you know, throughout year 12, wrestled with me a lot about this decision that I was, you know, consolidating in my mind to move toward a career as an educator. And it sort of comes back to exactly what you said before. I thought to myself, what way can I meaningfully serve the people around me? That's why Christians believe there is work in the world. It's to serve the people around us, not for self-gratification. And I thought to myself, okay, there's a bunch of things that I love doing, but a thing that I know I'm good at is explaining things and mentoring and helping people learn things. I actually thought that was a really common thing. I remember being an army cadet at school, and I sort of gravitated towards the younger cadets who did not know how to pitch a tent or how to shine their boots properly. And I'd say, look, let me show you, it's not that hard. And I loved the sense of growth that I could see. I found that really joyful to take part in. I thought that was very common, and then I realized, I had my friends help me see, that's not as common as I thought. And that was where that calling first, I guess, grew in my mind, that this was something special to me that would enable me to give back to the community that I'm a part of.
Do you think that the experience with your mum's cancer, did that help you develop resilience?
It's a really tricky question to answer in some ways, even though I could straightforwardly say yes. I look back and I think absolutely the times when I grew the most were in the darkest times that I walked through. I guess it's tricky to answer because I don't know what might have happened otherwise. I can kind of guess, look into my reverse crystal ball. I do know as the youngest child, and I'm a bit ashamed to say this, but my mum kind of babied me a little bit and looked after me so well. And I think she, because I had some health issues when I was a lot younger, just really cared for me and was so tender and loving in so many different ways, and had a lot of sympathy for the kind of like physical suffering that I went through as a little kid. And so I think I had to grow up really, really fast, and especially as my family around me aged and sort of moved on to their different things. The resilience that that experience gave to me was the only thing that enabled me to survive and be a, critical part of my family, moving through that grief. So I guess my short answer to that is yes, but I do wonder what might have happened otherwise.
Eddie, I have to say, we've actually got 3 callers from India, which is super, super exciting. So hi, everybody. Eddie, you started putting your lessons online in 2012. That's pretty much nearly a decade ago, because of a boy who was sick and missing his lessons. But I wonder what kept you going beyond that? Did you get encouragement, or did you think this is a great way to share that with everybody? What was the motivation?
Yeah, it's a lovely question. I do think to myself, with a little bit of embarrassment, that I would love to claim credit for having had a very strategic plan for how I'd worked it all out. Here's my 5-year trajectory and the goals and targets I was aiming for. But in fact, I was doing this online, and that student who you mentioned, he went on to graduate from school. And I thought, oh, okay, well, the original purpose for me putting these videos online has kind of ceased. Is there a point? And it was actually, and this happens so often, it was my students who taught me. They really gave me a lesson at this point. They said, Mr. Wu, there are so many of our friends who are so grateful that they can actually, even though they're not here at this school, they could never have the chance to learn from you face to face. They can actually learn via, these very simple, humble videos of, I'm not doing anything special. It was literally just my everyday classroom lesson, and I just hit record on it. And for me to realize, wow, there's actually an impact that I can have beyond the classroom. Like even just the 30 students in front of me, that to me is just mind-boggling, that I get to have a role in helping to influence them and help them grow and learn. And to know that I can go even further beyond that. I mean, I'm delighted that there are so many people from India. I happen to know that there's a significant proportion of the people who watch my videos from there, in the US and the UK and pretty much anywhere else that English is spoken, because mathematics is a bit of a universal language. So I think it was that knowledge, that something I could do that was super simple, that was not kind of, there's nothing special about what's happening in my classroom. It's the same thing you would see if you walked into 100 classrooms around Australia, around the world, where dedicated teachers are pouring themselves out for the sake of their students. It's not special, but opening the door to that experience through the internet, that's the thing which I thought, I can't close that now. I want to keep doing this.
Well, it is special, Eddie, and I'll just read you out some of the things that are coming across at the moment. I mean, Joanne is saying that she relates to how you feel about being an Australian Asian and being perceived in Australian society, even though we feel, there are a lot of Asians from all parts at the moment, but she absolutely feels with what you were saying. And Emma is in lockdown with her 2 boys, aged 9 and 7, watching from Sydney. So you're right. I mean, this virtual world really does create connections. I'm interested that you have more than 1.24 subscribers. That was last time I looked. At least 60 million views. I mean, do you ever ask yourself, where is this going, or when am I going to stop?
Yeah, I do pose that question to myself every now and then. I mean, I'm a person who works with numbers every day, and yet, I mean, I teach at a very large school. Cherrybrook Technology High School has 2,000 students, but except for when we have evacuation drills, you literally never see all 2,000 students in one place at the same time, because even our very large school hall doesn't fit everybody in. So when we have an assembly, some people are out doing other things while the rest of us are in there listening to speakers or seeing awards being presented. 2,000 people just staring out at them. It's enough to boggle the mind. And to know then that the numbers go so far beyond that, really just, I mean, it makes me think about numbers in astronomy. It's like, oh, this star is however many millions of kilometers away. And you just kind of think for a moment, you reflect and realize, you know what, I have no idea what the magnitude of those numbers is. And I guess for me, what it comes down to is, even for the size of those numbers, even for the quantity, it's actually the quality that matters most to me. Every now and then, I'll get an email or a message from someone who said, you know, thank you for making these videos available. It's what helped me get through, you know, this challenging experience of a tough subject. Or, you know, our whole district was on lockdown and we didn't have online learning, but I could access your resources. To me, the difference I can make in a single life, that's the thing, more than the size of the numbers, that really motivates me and encourages me to keep going.
So when you know that you are about to go back into a new school term and it's going to be via remote learning, I mean, some people might say, hey, but everything you do is online. What's the problem? I mean, do you really notice? I mean, how do you feel at that thought of going back into remote learning?
Yeah, look, I mean, I do understand what people mean. I've had, I guess, a lot of practice, you know, 9+ years of being able to speak at a camera and record things and do all the technology side of it. But the answer is there is a huge difference. And I remember, you know, say 12 months ago, as we kind of came out of the first lockdown here in New South Wales, and when we returned back into the classroom and I could see the smiling faces of my students, or not even the smiling faces. Sometimes I'd explain something and I could read the confusion on their face and I thought, okay, Eddie, you have not explained that clearly. You need to do that better. Even me looking at your face right now, there's a huge difference to from that to trying to deliver learning to sometimes hundreds of students at a time and lacking the feedback and the interaction, which, you know, we can do this through a chat, but it isn't the same, is it? And, you know, being able to even sit beside a student. I remember teaching some pre-service teachers, people who were training to be educators, and saying to them, there are really important things that you communicate to your students through your tone of voice, through your posture. You know, even when I remember as an early career teacher learning, not to stand over students, but to sit beside them or even kneel beside them. It's the smallest thing, but it actually communicates, here I am, here to support you, here to learn alongside you, not to kind of frown at your inability to do this question. Those kinds of things are so missed when we go on to remote learning. So even though I'm grateful for how accessible technology makes learning like this, I'm still craving the time to be back with my students face to face.
And I love that, because what you're just talking about there is what it means to be human. And of course, kindness is part of what it means to be human. One more question about maths. Eddie, you say it's a misconception that people have a brain for maths. And the only thing I'd say to that is, really?
Your incredulity is not surprising to me, Jane. I do get it though. I mean, the way I like to think about it is that this is a very silly metaphor, but I don't know how much exactly you can see on the frame, but I have a fairly slender build. I'm never going to be really muscular or strong. And so it's a fairly natural thing to say. It's like, well, okay, you're never going to be an athlete, right? It's Eddie, that's not what you're built for, right? Now, I think most people who are listening or watching in will say, yeah, maybe, but you could certainly be fitter and more athletic than you are now if you did nothing, if you just sat on your butt for all of lockdown and didn't get out and enjoy the sun. As it turns out, I actually really do enjoy a particular kind of exercise. I'm a long distance runner. Turns out having a slender build is really well fit for that. And I guess what my point is, bring it back to maths, is that I know we often might think, oh, okay, I just was not able to crunch numbers really quickly or memorize formulas. That's a very common experience. And my response to that is, yes, but that's only a part of mathematics. I'm going to shift metaphors for a second, but my three kids, they're all very musical. They love to sing and play the drums and the piano and the flute, and I love listening to them most of the time. Some of their practice, it clearly needs development, but when I think about them playing music, what I love about music is how broad and diverse it is. My son, who's a drummer, part of the reason he plays it is his arms are not long enough to play a flute, which my daughter can. I just needed to find the part of music that he could enjoy and that he could really grasp. And I think the same is true of mathematics. Many of us believe that mathematics is not for us because there's just a particular part of it that we didn't have a good time learning at school. But I truly believe anyone can find their place in mathematics. It's like music, we just need to find the songs we enjoy.
You are a technology as well as a mathematics teacher, and I wonder, do you ever think about the kind of world your kids are going to grow up in? I mean, this is such a huge issue at the moment as we contemplate artificial intelligence and the difference between machines and humans. You know, we have abstraction, but do you ever kind of think and perhaps even worry about a future where your kids will grow up?
The short answer is yes. I mean, I'm not sure if there are any parents out there who haven't at least once contemplated, wow, you know, if I grew up in the world that my children are growing up in, I don't know how I would relate, how I would be able to, you know, look anyone in the eye knowing that my entire life has been catalogued online through Facebook or Twitter or Snapchat or whatever it happens to be. And you know, I think about, my kids and particularly social media, which is kind of in many ways what I've hopefully used to really help a lot of people. It also has a dark side. I think that every power that humanity has ever come up with, power is not moral. It depends on how it's used, whether it achieves good or ill. And so I do think with a little bit of nervousness about the kind of world my children are walking into, but I also know that this is not new in a sense. The development of technology throughout history is something which humanity has always had to wrestle with, and you know, it is never going to serve us to just kind of shrink back and say, whoa, I just don't have the time or the thought or the effort or the wisdom to be able to understand the situation. We've got to process that. We've got to work that out together and find a wise path through it, no matter what it looks like.
Now, I'll just mention to everybody who's on this virtual conversation that we've got about 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes if I'm a little greedy and I keep wanting to ask Eddie questions. So I hope you'll get ready and think of questions that you would like to ask Eddie, and please use the Q&A tab for that so I don't have to switch things around too much. That's being helpful to me, kind to me. Thank you. Eddie, you've said that you love being in the classroom and your intent is to stay there as long as possible. It's what animates you and gives you energy. How do you know, though, that something else couldn't make you even happier?
That's a really good question. I mean, I guess the most direct way I can answer that is to say, I don't know. There are so many things in my life which, if I had come back from now and gone to Eddie in the past and said, hey, guess what? This is going to happen. I'd say, really? Like, how can you, I could never picture some of the things that have happened to me in the last few years. I couldn't even have contemplated. So I know enough about myself to know that the future holds things of uncertainty, and I'm okay to embrace that. But I guess, where does that quote that you just mentioned, that conviction, where that comes from is that there's this funny thing, which I know education isn't the only, industry that does this, but we have this funny, counterintuitive, counterproductive habit of saying, wow, you are a great teacher. You are fantastic at working with children in the classroom. I know what we'll do. We'll promote you right out of there and sit you in an office or put you in some kind of role of management where actually your skill set is not that useful. And so me wanting to stay close to the classroom, close to students, is a recognition of the fact that I think that is where my core skills are. But even like right now, I am not just a teacher at Sherbrooke Technology High School. I have the great privilege of working with the New South Wales Department of Education and working across schools broadly. And I like to think, and I guess the only people who will be able to tell me otherwise are people who I work with and who I get to interact with. I like to think that the work I do outside the classroom is of a better and a different quality because I still remain in the classroom. I still have that currency. I still have that understanding of the unique challenges and joys of being in front of students, wrestling with curriculum changes as they roll through. That's what's in the news at the moment. I feel that's a great privilege, and I never want to lose that.
And we can't forget too, you have Teenage Boss, the ABC TV show, you write books. It's not as if there's only one thing that you do. I'm happy to say we're already getting some questions in. We sort of answered the question about your life. Well, no, this is quite a direct question from Renee. So if you weren't a maths teacher, so it's a bit similar to what I've just asked you, but I don't know, do you harbour a secret desire, that maybe you'd like to share with us here? We won't tell.
Obviously. I mean, this is quite private, but look, I got two thoughts in my mind. The first one is sort of this childhood dream I had that I wanted to be a firefighter growing up, and I just thought like it's such a heroic thing to do, and you can help communities. It's so wonderful. I then learned, I mentioned briefly before that I had some health issues when I was younger. One of them is that I'm a chronic asthmatic. I'm better at managing it now, but it's still an issue. And so I learned that, being a firefighter and frequently going into places filled with smoke, not the greatest profession for someone with asthma like mine. So that's maybe a bit of a frivolous thing to say. Honestly, the thing that I would love most to do if I weren't a teacher is to be a stay-at-home dad. My kids, like I just constantly think about the privilege it is to raise young children, not so young children now, to be able to give them love, an environment where they know they're cared for, where they know that there are people in their lives who believe in them and will support them to do whatever it is that they can do to serve their communities and grow and flourish in themselves. What a joy that is. And I constantly feel like that's the thing that I would want to spend more time doing if I weren't doing all the rest of the things.
Great. Eddie, what do you struggle with?
I think I struggle with how much time do you say we have, Jane? I struggle with so many things. Probably one of the biggest ones that I struggle with is kind of this undercurrent of guilt, I guess, around all of the things that I don't do. I feel in a wonderfully privileged position that I get the opportunity to do lots of different things. But whenever I think about all the things I could do, I think about the things that I don't. So there's a really, obvious example. There are 2,215 schools in public schools, I should say, in New South Wales. And I've probably worked directly with about a quarter of them, which sounds like a lot in one sense. It's like, wow, 500 schools, that's a fair few. But at the same time, it's kind of like, wow, 75% of the state I haven't even begun to touch because I'm one human being, and there's only so much that a single person can do. I already mentioned the time that I would love to spend. There's kind of this bottomless pit of things I would love to do with my family, and I struggle with that, and I struggle with sometimes the paralyzing feeling that gives me of I can't do all of it. Should I even bother with any of it? And sometimes I go into little valleys of that, particularly when life and work are hard. So that's, I think, an overarching struggle that I've had all the way through my life.
Thank you. Vicky has asked, what was the kindness or support that you received sometime from someone unexpected, and how did that change your life? That's a great question, Vicky.
Wow, that's a big one. Look, yeah, I'm thinking of a bunch of different people, and I couldn't pick out just one because it wouldn't be fair to the range of people who've done this to me. But I often think, I mentioned before that I'm a classic introvert, but as a teacher, you kind of have to learn a lot of traditionally extroverted skills like communication and forming relationships with people, developing rapport and that kind of thing. And so I guess what sort of comes along with that territory, and I think this is something that we all do in, ways, shapes and forms, is you kind of develop a bit of a persona. Like you kind of put on a suit, and this is who I am in front of other people. And you kind of have different suits and personas for different groups of people you interact with. One of the things which I think I learned from a young age when I experienced bullying, like you mentioned from primary school, is that there are certain places or groups of people where if you are vulnerable with them, you will end up really hurt. And it's not a nice thing to reckon with, but it's also reality. And so I think from that early age, I thought, my coping mechanism, I guess, was to hide, to think about my real deep inner personality and to say that's not something that I want to be necessarily out there in the open, because that will be ridiculed and it will be, attacked and hated. And so I think where I've experienced those surprising kindnesses, that is what the question was about, is all those many times that so many people throughout my life have found out, have sort of discovered me and gotten to know me better, and instead of pulling away and being sort of shocked or not wanting to know me, it's like, that's fine, actually have known and appreciated me more. That's a really special experience, and I'm very grateful that that's happened a number of times to me. So for all of those people who've let me see that part of myself that actually can be loved and valued, there's nothing else I can say except thank you.
Well, that's a wonderful insight, Eddie. Thank you for that. Malika, or Milicha, I'm sorry if I've said that wrong, has said you're inspirational and you set a great example. Do you have any specific methods to encourage the kids you teach to be kinder?
Wow, that's a delightful question. I think the biggest thing that always comes to the front of my mind is I always want my students to recognize the impact that they have on other people. I think that this is actually something that harks back to, this is a really strange connection to make, but I'm a mathematics teacher and these are the things whizzing around in my mind. I don't know if, Jane, the phrase the butterfly effect is something you've ever heard of. It's an idea in mathematics and physics, which is that sometimes, in some situations, a very small tweak in one spot can actually have enormous effects elsewhere. So the butterfly effect is named after a butterfly flapping its wings on one side of the ocean, and that little current of air just grows and grows and grows into a mighty wind and becomes a typhoon on the other side of the ocean. Now that sounds like a fairly negative way to say it, but I think, and this is what I try and encourage my students to do, I think we can think of that positively as well. The smallest acts of kindness can sometimes have really profound effects on the people around us. And I feel very thankful that a number of times my ex-students have returned back to school to say hello. They've been dropping in, saying hi to all of their past teachers. And sometimes they'll relay to me a story of some interaction I had with them that made some very deep impression on them. And often, I'm going to say 9 times out of 10, it's an interaction or a conversation I don't remember. And it's not just because I have a bad memory, I promise. It's sometimes the smallest things. A conversation I had with a student just as the bell went and we walked out of that class together, out to lunch, and instead of me, just making a beeline for the staff room, I actually happened to walk with this student to wherever he or she was having lunch with their friends, and I just had that conversation with them over a couple of minutes. That was such a small thing. I do that all the time because it feels natural to spend this very, precious time with these students, trying to encourage them and give them a positive influence. But to know that that can have a very deep and lasting effect on someone, that's pretty special. And I always want my students to take that lesson away from their time at school.
Wow, Eddie, thank you. We have about 6 minutes left to go, and Jane asks, not this one, do you think that kindness solves most problems encountered in the classroom and playground and possibly the world, or is that stretching it too much?
I'm an optimist, so I can definitely come alongside the idea that kindness, especially undeserved kindness, like when I was talking about forgiveness before, it is powerful and it can have really deep and amazing effects, not just on an individual, but indeed on a whole class, a school, a society. I do want to recognize, though, that sometimes the problems that we face around us, to reckon with their reality, a simple kind act sometimes isn't enough, and I don't want us to imagine that some of the systemic problems around us can simply be solved by one act here or another. I think, for example, and the fact that I often work with regional schools across New South Wales, and in rural and remote settings, sometimes the challenges that communities face out there are far deeper and run further into a community's past, its history. They're far more profound than can simply be undone by a few individual acts here and there. We have to reckon with the fabric of society, the history that's brought us here, and the things that have been done that we need to reckon with. I mean, it was recently NAIDOC week, and I think about when the apology to the stolen generations was given. That was a powerful marker, and it was a start of a conversation, but that in itself was not enough. It's just a symbol, right? So I guess I want to recognize the impact of kindness, but also want to wrestle with the fact that sometimes we have to be thoughtful and creative and determined in how we show that kindness, not just individual acts, but across our entire culture and society.
Thank you. Here's a good one. How do you encourage your students to feel empowered, respectful, and confident in the classroom with their peers? That's from Emma.
Wow, thanks, Emma. That's a wonderful question. I think that probably the first thing that comes to mind is to give them the opportunity to. I know it's going to sound strange, but I often think about school as an environment which sometimes, in order to try and maintain a positive and a safe learning environment, we put all these wise fences and constraints on our students. And I think that sometimes, almost all the time, even though sometimes students will do things that you kind of shake your head at and you think, wow, was I ever that silly and naive and immature? And the answer was, yes, we all were. But I often think, we don't give our students enough credit for what they're capable of doing. I think about some of the students at my school and the incredible acts of selflessness and of thinking about the communities around them, of ingenuity in trying to serve the people and the needs they see around them in their families and their friends, with strangers. I think about recently some of the work that our students did raising funds for homeless people all around Sydney. And I think, what we need to do is to open their eyes to the needs around them and then give them the capacity, let them go, help them see they have the opportunity and the power to make that impact, rather than saying, no, this is not for you, big people will solve these problems. So I think enabling them and helping them see where the big problems are so that they can address them, that's probably the key.
Thank you. Now, Jerry is asking, what's your favourite subject in maths?
Oh, Jerry, that's pretty tough. That's like, which is your favorite child, right? I think I have an answer to this, which I always come back to. It's a bit like, different times I feel like different things and I enjoy different things, strongly influenced by what I happen to be teaching at the present time. But if I had to come back to one thing, it's always going to be geometry. I know that sounds a bit strange. It's like, shapes, that sounds a bit boring. But the reason why I love geometry so much is that so many people can say, I'm not really into maths, I don't enjoy it, I didn't understand it. But then if you put them in front of a beautiful piece of art, they can't help but have a visceral aesthetic experience, saying there is beauty here to admire and marvel at. There was skill that went into the perfect proportioning and symmetry of this artwork that I can't help but enjoy it. And geometry is the heartbeat underneath that. Even if you can't articulate it, you're still experiencing it. And that sense of mathematics being underneath everything that we experience around us that we think is beautiful. I made this reference to music and my kids before. Someone said once that music is the joy that we feel when we're counting but don't know it. I think that geometry is the perfect example of something that's always hiding beneath the surface, but that everyone can appreciate, and that's why I love it so much.
That's a fantastic answer, Eddie. Thank you. We're nearly out of time. There's a couple of questions I didn't get to, and I do apologise about that, but I really wanted to finish on this note. Eddie, if you were to give us 3 takeaways on kindness, suggestions, inspirational quotes, books, give us 3 takeaways before we bring this wonderful conversation to a close.
Jane, I will do my best. And I want to say thank you as well to everyone who asked questions. They were delightful. I guess, where would I start? Okay, number one, to encourage everyone who's here watching and listening, I think I'd say first, people care. I know that seems like a bit of a truism, but for me, maybe a story I could tell would really help us understand help me communicate and convey the importance of this. I mentioned before that in the last years of high school for me, my mum was quite sick. But one of the things she was very emphatic about was that she did not want anyone who didn't have to know, she didn't want them to be aware of what she was going through. And I think she didn't want pity, and she was quite a private person as well. And so as a consequence, none of my friends had any idea what was going on. They didn't know why often I would fall asleep in class. It was because I was up all night the previous evening, changing my mom's oxygen tank or something like that. They didn't know why sometimes I'd be at school in the morning and then after lunch I'd just disappear, because when she was in palliative care, there were a few really touch and go moments where, my brother and sister and I were all basically told, drop everything, this could be it. You want to be there if this is the last moment that you have. My friends didn't know any of that. And so for the vast majority of them, the first any of them knew that this happened was when they found out about the funeral and were told that they could come. And I still remember the experience of standing there surrounded by my friends who had actually progressively been sort of, becoming more and more remote from, because I couldn't share so much of my life to them because it was what my family wanted. But to know that they were there in that moment supporting me, they cared so deeply about something that I thought they would say, oh, we don't have time for that. People care much more often than we realize. So that's the first thing I hope encourages people. The second thing is maybe to think about the simple things that we often get distracted from in the busyness of life. We're coming to the end of school holidays at the moment, and all my friends who are not teachers, they always love to joke about school holidays. Just so anyone knows, I've just been recently working on the Year 12 major works in mathematics that my class has put together, and reading all these essays and watching videos they've created. A lot of fun, but also hard work. The thing that I think about at those times, and everyone's got their version of this, is that when we're busy, we often get so distracted from the simple things that bring joy to us. And so I've had a few moments recently where, the weather has had some beautiful times, and in lockdown, it's been all the more important to get out with the kids. I'm very fortunate. I live in a part of Sydney where there is abundant bushland that has been well protected, and it's just gorgeous to go there and enjoy the sights and the sounds and the smells of nature. So I think we all need to slow down a little bit and remember those simple things. And you asked for three things. So the third and last one is thinking about possibilities. And what I mean by that is, you mentioned before, last week you got to speak to Grace Tame, what an incredible woman she is, an incredible human being. One of the very sharp experiences that I can never forget from being part of the Australian of the Year Awards a few years ago was that when myself and 31 other people sort of all collected in Canberra for the national announcement of who the Australians of the Year would be, I remember going there and thinking, I can't believe I'm here. I can't believe that this is something I get to take part in. I was not thinking at all about being the recipient of the Australia's Local Hero Award. I was just so beyond the pale of what I thought was possible. I was just focused on these incredible individuals that I got to meet and spend time with and be inspired by. And the thing that really shocked me and has stuck with me ever since is that to an individual, every single person I spoke to as we spent those few days together said almost exactly the same thing. They said, I can't believe I'm here. I am just an ordinary person. I'm just doing my job, or I did what anyone would have done under the same circumstances, given the same opportunity I had. And it sort of dawned on me, we are all ordinary people, but ordinary people nonetheless are capable of extraordinary things. And so I guess to inspire everyone who's watching right now to think about the possibilities, you may feel like a very ordinary person, and so do I, and that's because we are, but human beings are all capable of incredible things. It's why I love working with students all the time. Every time I meet one, I think, wow, what are you capable of? What are you going to achieve? And how are you going to serve your community and flourish in it? The possibilities they're endless. So I hope that's something which a thought that inspires people tonight.
Wow, those are 3 fantastic takeaways, Eddie. And we'll be sure to put those up on our social media channels. This chat will be up on the Stay Kind YouTube channel, and I hope you'll share it as well, which I hope you will, Eddie.
Absolutely.
And ladies and gents and girls and boys who've joined this conversation, it's been such a delight for Eddie and me. And don't forget, we've got another Kind July conversation next week with Catherine Wolfgram, who's a wonderful transgender advocate. I hope you'll join us then. And really, Eddie, I just want to say thank you so much for giving us your time and your wonderful experiences and words on the subject of kindness. And we wish you all the best for going back to school.
Thank you so much, Jane. I really appreciate it and hope everyone had a great evening.
Bye.